Administrator Velthrak of the Galactic Cultural Exchange Center stood frozen in horror as his auxiliary sensory appendages registered the chaos unfolding in Exhibition Hall C. Dozens of small humans were engaged in what could only be described as unauthorized experimentation, surrounded by crude devices that emitted strange lights, vapors, and, in one particularly alarming case, small electrical discharges. "This is unacceptable," he burbled to his assistant, Zix 427. "These juvenile specimens are clearly violating at least 17 safety protocols. Look, that one is manipulating caustic substances." The caustic substances in question were, in fact, part of 12-year-old Emily Chen's award-winning demonstration on pH indicators using common household items. But Velthrak had already activated the emergency containment protocols before anyone could explain this. The dome-shaped force fields descended with impressive speed, each capturing a young scientist and their project. The children's reactions ranged from startled squeals to fascinated examination of the shimmering barriers now surrounding them. One particularly resourceful boy immediately began testing the field's resonant frequency with his tuning fork display. "Security measures have been successfully implemented," Zix 427 reported with mechanical efficiency. "All unauthorized experiments have been contained. Shall I begin processing the specimens according to standard protocol?" Before Velthrak could respond, Dr. Sarah Martinez, the human coordinator of what was supposed to be the first interspecies youth science fair, burst through the doors. Her face displayed a color shift that Velthrak's cultural training identified as indicating extreme agitation. "What in the name of Einstein are you doing?" she demanded, tablet computer clutched so tightly her knuckles matched the white of her lab coat. "These are children presenting science fair projects." Dr. Martinez, Velthrak's tone carried the particular note of condescension unique to bureaucrats across the galaxy. "Surely you understand that unsupervised experimentation by untrained juveniles presents an unacceptable risk to station safety. The protocols are quite clear." These experiments were not unsupervised. Martinez cut him off, jabbing a finger at the digital schedule displayed above the entrance. "This is a scheduled educational event. We filed all the proper paperwork. We have parental consent forms. We have safety inspections. We have—" "Mom," called out a voice from within one of the force fields. "Check this out. The containment field responds to acoustic frequencies above 2000 Hz." "That's fascinating, honey," Martins replied automatically before catching herself. "Jamie, sweetheart, please stop trying to break the containment field." "But Mom, I think I can." "Not now, sweetie." She turned back to Velthrak, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Release these children immediately." "I'm afraid that's quite impossible," Velthrak said. "Once containment protocols are initiated, all specimens must be processed through proper channels: security, documentation, decontamination." The word decontamination seemed to trigger something in Martinez. Her tablet clattered to the floor as she grabbed Velthrak by his ceremonial collar, pulling his face close to hers. The administrator's auxiliary sensory appendages detected traces of the stimulant humans called coffee on her breath. "Listen very carefully," she said. "Those are human children in there. In about 10 minutes, their parents are going to arrive for the science fair presentations. Do you know what happens when human parents discover their children have been unnecessarily contained and are about to be decontaminated?" Velthrak's species didn't have sweat glands, but he felt an uncomfortable moisture gathering beneath his ceremonial robes. "I assume they will file the appropriate complaints through proper channels." Martinez laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "Oh, you sweet summer alien. Let me explain something about human parents. We're not big on proper channels when it comes to our kids. Right now, you have exactly 8 minutes to release these children before this situation goes from minor diplomatic incident to why the Cultural Exchange Center needed a complete remodel." As if to emphasize her point, young Jamie's voice rang out again. "Mom, I've almost got it. The field harmonics are really interesting." "That's nice, dear," Martinez called back, not breaking eye contact with Velthrak. 7 minutes. Administrator. Tick-tock. Velthrak's tertiary brain began calculating the potential diplomatic ramifications, while his primary brain recalled unsettling footage he'd once seen of human parents lifting ground vehicles to rescue their offspring. His secondary brain, meanwhile, was noticing an alarming increase in the amplitude of fluctuations in Jamie's containment field. Her smile fading. "Their parents don't see protocols either. We see threats to be eliminated." The council chamber fell silent as the implications of this settled in. It was broken by another buzz from Chen's device. "Oh, interesting," she said. "The children have formed a research collective. They're calling it the Junior Containment Field Enhancement Initiative. They've already recruited 30 more members from the science fair participants." Anx Vix's eye stalk quivered. "They are collaborating. Human children are remarkably good at that," Martinez explained, "especially when adults tell them they can't do something. Right now, you have dozens of brilliant young minds excitedly sharing their observations about your technology. Their parents, many of whom are leading scientists themselves, are helping them document everything properly. The containment field specifications are classified." Velthrak protested weakly. Chen raised an eyebrow. "My daughter mapped its entire resonance frequency spectrum with a tuning fork and a borrowed spectrometer. Jamie Martinez calculated its power consumption rates using his phone. The Chang twins figured out its particle distribution matrix while playing with soap bubbles from their surface tension demonstration. The children have already reverse-engineered our containment technology," Anx Vix asked, all 3 of their eye stalks now fully extended in alarm. "Not reverse-engineered," Martinez corrected. "Improved. They're calling it Containment Field 2.0, now with better harmonics." She paused, checking her own device. "And apparently they just figured out how to make it change colors in response to music. They think it would make great mood lighting for the next science fair." Velthrak's chromatophores had progressed to a shade of mauve previously unknown to his species. "High Chancellor, I begin to suspect that our protocols regarding human offspring may require significant revision." "Indeed," Anx Vix agreed, their eye stalks swiveling to focus on the human representatives. "Perhaps we could establish a joint committee to develop more appropriate procedures." "Of course," Chen smiled. "The children have already drafted some suggestions, 73 pages of them, with full technical appendices. They were very thorough. Apparently, being contained gave them lots of time to think about improvements." And Martinez added, "They're very excited about presenting their findings at next month's Galactic Scientific Congress. We've already submitted their paperwork, through proper channels, of course." As Velthrak watched his carefully ordered bureaucratic world crumble in the face of human childhood ingenuity, his tertiary brain made a note: never underestimate small humans. They don't follow protocols. They rewrite them. The Galactic Cultural Exchange Center's main auditorium was packed with an unusual mix of beings. Aliens of various species sat beside human parents, all watching as a group of children commanded the stage. Emily Chen stood at the podium, her science fair project display now expanded into a full holographic presentation. As you can see from our initial observations, Emily pointed to a complex series of wave patterns. The standard containment field's harmonic resonance was actually limiting its efficiency. By adjusting the quantum frequency matrix, we've achieved a 47% increase in strength while reducing power consumption by 32%. Jamie Martinez stepped forward, adding his data to the holographic display. "The really interesting part came when we applied principles from my acoustic wave demonstration. The field can be tuned to respond to specific frequencies, allowing for selective permeability without compromising overall containment integrity." In the front row, Velthrak watched with a mixture of amazement and dismay as the children systematically dismantled and rebuilt his facility's security systems. His auxiliary sensory appendages twitched as Emily pulled up the next slide. "But that's not even the cool part," she grinned. Lisa, show them what we discovered about the particle distribution matrix. Lisa Chung, still wearing her signature pigtails, bounced to the front. The hologram shifted to show what appeared to be soap bubbles intersecting with energy fields. When we introduced surface-active agents to the field boundary, we found that the particle distribution wasn't uniform. There were these tiny gaps, quantum bubbles, we're calling them. By redistributing the field energy through these points, we can create stable microbubbles of containment. Her twin brother Tommy joined her, adding his own data streams to the presentation. Think of it like a honeycomb instead of a solid wall. Each cell can be individually controlled, making the whole system more flexible and responsive. We've already designed protocols for medical quarantine that are 60% more effective than current methods. In the audience, Ambassador Chen leaned over to whisper to High Chancellor Enx Vix. The twins' parents are leading researchers in nanomedicine. They've been hosting weekly study sessions for the Children's Research Collective in their home lab. Enx Vix's eye stalks wavered between the stage and their data pad, which was displaying real-time calculations of the potential applications. These improvements, they could revolutionize everything from medical containment to space station safety protocols. Children see possibilities where adults see limitations, Dr. Martins replied softly. They haven't learned what's supposedly impossible yet. On stage, the presentation had reached its climax. Emily gestured to a large experimental setup at the center of the stage. And now, we'll demonstrate the practical applications of our improved containment field technology. The audience watched in stunned silence as the children activated their prototype. A shimmering field sprang to life, but unlike the harsh, uniform barriers of standard containment fields, this one flowed like liquid crystal, forming complex geometric patterns that shifted and adapted in response to various stimuli. The field automatically adjusts its structure based on what it's containing, Jamie explained, tossing various objects through the barrier. Each was caught in its own perfectly sized bubble of energy. It only uses exactly as much power as needed for each containment cell, and it can differentiate between threatening and non-threatening objects. We also made it change colors because it looks cool, Lisa added, triggering a rainbow ripple through the field that drew appreciative gasps from the audience. In the back of the auditorium, a group of Galactic Science Council members huddled together, frantically updating their evaluation protocols. One of them was overhead muttering, "But they're just children. How did they?" The presentation concluded with a detailed proposal for implementing the new technology throughout the Cultural Exchange Center. As applause filled the auditorium, Velthrak noticed something remarkable. Species that normally kept strict physical boundaries were mingling, drawn together by their shared amazement at what they'd witnessed. "Administrator," Emily called from the stage, "we have a special demonstration prepared for you. Would you like to test our improved containment field yourself?" Velthrak's chromatophores shifted rapidly through several colors before settling on a shade that indicated resigned acceptance. As he made his way to the stage, he heard Dr. Martinez chuckle. "Don't worry," she assured him. They promised to make it a gentle demonstration. Though I should mention that Jamie added some special features after you called his original science fair project crude and potentially hazardous. The children's collective grins did nothing to ease Velthrak's concern, as the improved containment field shimmed to life around him. Changing colors in time with what he recognized as human pop music, he made a mental note to update the Cultural Exchange Center's mission statement. Clearly, the adults weren't the only ones doing the teaching here. 1 month after the children's presentation, the Cultural Exchange Center had undergone a remarkable transformation. Velthrak stood in his office, watching through the newly installed adaptive containment fields as groups of human and alien children worked together in what had once been the formal reception area. The Arxian delegation is particularly impressed with the Joint Education Initiative, Zix 427 reported, scrolling through data on their tablet. Their own offspring have shown a 200% increase in problem-solving capabilities since beginning collaboration with the human children. And how many protocols have they creatively reinterpreted this week? Velthrak asked, noticing a small group huddled around what appeared to be a modified food synthesizer. "Only 3, sir. Though I should note that their reinterpretation of the station's waste recycling system has reduced our energy consumption by 40%. Through the shimming barrier, Velthrak watched as Emily Chen explained something to a young Arxian, their tentacles waving in excitement as they manipulated a holographic diagram. Nearby, the Chang twins were teaching a group of Xylaxian larvalings how to create stable quantum bubbles using nothing but sound waves and modified gaming consoles. The Council of Science has sent another inquiry, Zix 427 continued. They wish to know when the next presentation from the, how do they phrase it, Junior Innovation Coalition will be ready. Tell them that Dr. Martins and Ambassador Chen are handling the children's scheduling, Velthrak replied, his auxiliary sensory appendages twitching at the memory of his last attempt to impose rigid timetables on the young human's research efforts. A flash of light from the activity area caught his attention. Jamie Martinez was demonstrating something to a mixed group of human and alien children, his mother watching proudly from a nearby observation post. "What are they working on now?" Velthrak asked, trying to keep the worry from his voice. According to their project proposal, they're developing a way to use containment field harmonics for faster-than-light communication, Zix 427 answered. The Arxian children suggested that the quantum bubbles might be useful for information transfer, and young Jamie theorized that by linking multiple fields. They were interrupted by a sudden cheer from the group as whatever they were testing produced a cascade of sparkling lights throughout the containment field network. "Did they just?" Velthrak began. "Yes, sir. It appears they've successfully transmitted data through quantum field harmonics at approximately 3.7 times the speed of light." Zix 427 paused. Using equipment from the Recreation Room's music center and 6 modified game controllers. Velthrak watched as the children immediately began improving their setup, human and alien appendages working together seamlessly. "Have you noticed," Zix 427, "how none of them seem to care about species differences? They just collaborate." "Indeed, sir. The human children appear to have a remarkable ability to inspire curiosity in other species' offspring. The Xylaxian queen has reported that her larvalings are now asking questions about concepts they shouldn't even be aware of for another molting cycle." In the activity area, Lisa Chang was now explaining something to a fascinated group of Quantum Physics Council members who had arrived to investigate the light show. Her pigtails bounced as she sketched equations in the air, the august scientists taking careful notes. "Administrator," Zix 427 said carefully, "the High Chancellor has sent a private communique. They wish to know if you would consider heading a new department." "Oh." Velthrak's chromatophores shifted nervously. "Yes, sir. They're calling it the Interspecies Youth Innovation Division. Apparently, several member species have expressed interest in establishing similar programs on their homeworlds." Through the containment field, Velthrak watched as Emily helped a young Arxian adjust their tentacles to better manipulate the holographic controls. The alien child's color patterns showed pure joy as they successfully created their first quantum bubble. "Tell the High Chancellor," Velthrak said slowly, "that I would be honored. Though I suspect my role will be less about administration and more about staying out of the way of progress." "Very wise, sir," Zix 427 agreed. "Oh, and one more thing. The children have submitted a proposal to redesign the entire station's security grid. They're calling it Project Safe Space, making the galaxy fun for everyone." "Of course they have," Velthrak sighed, but his chromatophores shifted to a color that indicated fond resignation. "Have Dr. Martins and Ambassador Chen review it first, and perhaps we should schedule another emergency protocols update. I have a feeling we're going to need it." As if to emphasize his point, another cheer went up from the activity area as the children's quantum communication experiment produced a dazzling display of interconnected energy patterns throughout the station's containment field network. "Sir," Zix 427 reported, Checking their readings, they've just achieved 4.2 times light speed, using a modified dance game controller and what appears to be a lava lamp. Velthrak watched as Jamie excitedly explained the principles to a group of wide-eyed alien children. You know, Zix 427, I'm beginning to think our greatest mistake was ever believing we could contain human creativity in the first place. Indeed, sir. The data suggests it may be exponentially contagious across species boundaries. In the activity area, the children had already moved on to their next experiment, human and alien minds working together to reshape the galaxy's understanding of what was possible, one quantum bubble at a time. 6 months after the science fair incident, the Galactic Cultural Exchange Center hosted its first Interspecies Youth Innovation Summit. The main hall, once a monument to formal diplomatic protocols, now hummed with the energy of hundreds of young minds from across the galaxy. High Chancellor Enx Vix stood at the podium, all 3 eye stalks focused on the assembled crowd. When Administrator Velthrak first activated containment protocols during a human science fair, we thought we were facing a diplomatic crisis. Instead, we discovered something far more powerful, the unlimited potential of young minds working together across species boundaries. In the audience, Velthrak's chromatophores shifted to a proud purple as he watched Emily Chen and her Arxian research partner demonstrate their latest invention, a quantum-enhanced universal translator that could convey not just words. Zix 427, he said carefully. Perhaps we should review the protocols regarding scheduled educational events. Accessing, the assistant began, but was interrupted by the distinctive sound of multiple containment fields beginning to resonate at their critical frequency. Apparently, Jamie had shared his findings with the other children. 6 minutes, Martine said pleasantly. Oh, and it sounds like the kids are teaching each other about harmonics. They do that, you know. Share knowledge. Solve problems. Usually faster than adults would like. In the background, more containment fields were starting to shimmer erratically. A small girl with pigtails was explaining excitedly how the field indicator from her project seemed to react with the field's energy matrix in fascinating ways. Velthrak made what his species would later record as the wisest decision of his administrative career. Zix 427, initiate immediate containment release. All specimens. Now. But sir, the protocols. Now. The fields dropped just as the first parents began arriving. They found their children excitedly comparing notes about the properties of alien containment technology, already incorporating their observations into revised project presentations. Martinez smiled at Velthrak, releasing his collar. Welcome to your first lesson about human children. Administrator, I suggest you take careful notes. There will be a test later. Velthrak straightened his robes, trying to regain some dignity. I believe, Doctor, that some revision of our protocols regarding human educational activities may be in order. You think? Martins raised an eyebrow. Just wait until you see what happens when Jamie presents his new findings about your containment field technology. His mother's the head of Earth's Quantum Physics Institute, by the way. I'm sure she'll find his observations fascinating. Velthrak's auxiliary sensory appendages drooped. Somehow, he suspected this was only the beginning of his education about human children. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Cultural Exchange Center's Administrative Council was not going well. Velthrak stood before the assembled representatives, his auxiliary sensory appendages wilting under their collective scrutiny. Let me ensure I understand this correctly, High Chancellor Enx Vix said, each word dripping with carefully measured disappointment. You activated emergency containment protocols on a group of human offspring during a sanctioned educational event. The situation appeared to warrant immediate action, Velthrak began, but was interrupted by the harsh buzz of Ambassador Chen's communication device. My apologies, she said, not sounding apologetic at all as she checked the device. That's another message from my daughter Emily's quantum physics study group. They've apparently made some fascinating discoveries about our containment field technology. They're applying for a patent, by the way. Velthrak's chromatophores shifted to what his species considered a deeply mortified shade of mauve. The children were conducting unauthorized experiments. They were conducting authorized science projects, Dr. Martins corrected, her voice carrying the particular edge that human parents reserve for those who had wronged their children. Projects that had been thoroughly vetted by our safety committee. Projects that were meant to demonstrate human children's scientific creativity to our galactic neighbors. Well, they certainly demonstrated something, Ambassador Chen muttered, still scrolling through her device. Emily's group has already drafted 3 proposals for improving the efficiency of our containment systems. Apparently, they found the current design, and I quote, kind of primitive. High Chancellor HFY's primary eye stalk swiveled toward the human representatives. These are juvenile specimens, yes, not fully matured humans. Children, Martinez emphasized. Human children, who, as you've discovered, are naturally curious, incredibly adaptable, and capable of turning almost any situation into a learning experience, even being unnecessarily contained by overzealous administrators. That's what I don't understand, Velthrak interjected. They were in containment fields. Why were they not distressed? Why did they not follow proper containment protocols? Ambassador Chen smiled. It was the kind of smile that made Velthrak's tertiary brain suggest immediate retreat. Administrator, let me tell you about something we call reverse psychology. The quickest way to get a human child to do something is often to tell them they can't do it. But the protocols were designed for adults. Martinez finished. Adults who understand and respect bureaucratic authority. Children, especially human children, operate on a different wavelength. They don't see barriers, they see puzzles to solve. They don't see rules, they see hypotheses to test. And when you threaten those children, Chen added, but emotional context and cultural nuances. The children have taught us something profound. HFY continued. They showed us that our differences are not barriers to be contained, but opportunities to be explored. Their natural curiosity, unburdened by preconceptions of what is possible, has advanced our understanding of the universe in ways our most educated scientists never imagined. Near the stage, the Chung twins were helping a group of Zelaxian larvalings adjust their prototype of a new medical containment system. The design had already been adopted by 3 major space stations and was being considered for implementation across the entire galactic healthcare network. Perhaps most importantly, HFY's voice carried a note of amusement. They have taught us that sometimes the best response to being contained is to simply think outside the box. Jamie Martinez, who had been tinkering with something under his seat, chose that moment to activate what he called the Quantum Mood Lighting 2.0. The entire hall's containment field network came alive with synchronized patterns of light and color, drawing gasps of delight from the assembled beings. Dr. Martinez leaned over to Ambassador Chen. Should we tell them he programmed that using the station's maintenance protocols? Let's not give Velthrak's auxiliary sensory appendages any more twitches than necessary. Chen smiled. Though I must say, he's adapted remarkably well to our children's creative approach to rules. Indeed, Velthrak was now heading the station's most dynamic department. The Interspecies Youth Innovation Division had become a model for similar programs across the galaxy. His once rigid adherence to protocol had been replaced by a new set of guidelines, unofficially known as the Human Child Principles. Curiosity is not a containment breach. Impossible is merely a temporary limitation. When children collaborate, expect miracles. Always check the recreation room for missing equipment. Never underestimate small humans or their alien friends. As the summit continued, young minds from dozens of species shared ideas, solved problems, and created new possibilities. The Chung twins' quantum bubble technology had evolved into a galaxy-wide communication network. Emily and her Archean partner's cultural translation system was revolutionizing diplomatic relations, and Jamie's containment field modifications had spawned an entirely new field of quantum engineering, though he was currently more interested in using it to create the ultimate zero-gravity playground. "You know," Velthrak commented to Zix 427 as they watched the proceedings, "when I first encountered human children, I thought they needed to be contained for safety reasons. Now I realize that the galaxy needed them to break free of its own containment, the limitations we placed on what we thought was possible." "Indeed, sir," Zix 427 replied, "their mechanical efficiency softened by months of exposure to human unpredictability. Though perhaps we should check what they're doing with that quantum playground. The energy readings are unusual." Before Velithrak could respond, a shout of triumph came from the recreation area where Jamie and a diverse group of young aliens had apparently succeeded in creating a localized time dilation field. For longer recess, they explained to the startled Physics Council members who rushed to investigate. High Chancellor Enxvix's eye stalks quivered with barely contained amusement. "Administrator Velthrak, I believe this is the part where you would normally cite protocol violations." Velthrak watched as human and alien children collaborated to fine-tune their temporal playground, their joy transcending all species barriers. His chromatophore shifted to a color that had no exact translation in any known language, but somehow conveyed both pride and surrender to the inevitable chaos of progress. "No, High Chancellor," he replied. "I believe this is the part where we acknowledge that the future belongs to those who are brave enough to imagine it, and wise enough to let the young lead the way." In the background, the children's quantum mood lighting pulsed in harmony with their laughter, a visible reminder that the greatest discoveries often come not from containing curiosity, but from setting it free.